People are really hungry for what is transcendental, what is beautiful, what is true, what is good. And they're not finding it. They're not finding it in the world. They're looking for something which God has infused into us. And that is, they're looking for Him.
Could you tell us a little bit about our origins in Hungary, Chorna Abbey, and how we came to California?
Our abbey in Chorna there was closed down by the communists. That's how evil communism is. It's able to shut down very great institutions that have been in for a long time. They actually had to cut through barbed wire, they had to go through minefields, and they had to swim across the river. And I believe that all the sacrifices they made coming here, the hardships that they experienced, really bore fruit. Because that word sacrifices to make holy. They really made this place a holy place.
We need to talk a little bit about that just to inform our friends about what is this election, how does it work?
It's very much like a conclave. It's a little conclave. It's a really momentous occasion because if you think about it, he is a father. That's what Abbot means father. He is the father that's going to provide. It's the father that's going to protect for the next foreseeable future.
There were many, many obstacles along the way, and I remember thinking the suffering that goes along with these very great goods is the reason why God blesses it.
God's ways are so much greater than ours that He has great plans for us. And it's just a matter of us being open to those inspirations that He gives us.
What do you hope the Abbey will look like 10 years from now, 50 years from now, 100 years from now? Could you tell us a little bit about our origins in Hungary, Chorna Abbey, and how we came to California?
Sure. Well, the order was founded in 1121 by Saint Norbert, but the Abbey of Chorna, I believe it was founded in 1184.
I think that's right.
So it's a very ancient abbey, and then what all the Tartars and all the marauders were able to do, the communists were able to do in the 50s during the revolution. And our abbey in Chorna there, after being there for so many years, was closed down by the communists. That's how evil communism is. It's able to shut down very great institutions that have been in for a long time and have done a lot of good. So the fathers had left that community there just the night before it was actually closed down. And when they left, they actually had to cut through barbed wire, they had to go through minefields, and they had to swim across the river and finally find themselves in Austria, in the free land. And from there, they came to the United States via one of the abbeys in Wisconsin, and then they found their way to Southern California, because at the time the Archbishop of Los Angeles was building a lot of high schools. And since the fathers had these great schools in Europe, in Hungary, they were qualified. Actually, they were overqualified for the American institutions, but they came here anyway, and they started teaching at modern-day high school. And then they founded a novitiate and a minor seminary also, which then turned into a preparatory school, at which I taught for a number of years. But that's how they found their way here. Lots of sacrifices they made, and I believe that all the sacrifices they made coming here, the hardships that they experienced, really bore fruit, because that word sacrifices to make holy. You know, sacrum and then facere, to make holy. They really made this place a holy place. As a matter of fact, when I first visited for the very first time, I had never even heard of the Norbertines. And when I visited, I remember thinking to myself when I drove up, I thought this is like a country house monastery. It was very, very simple. And the buildings were not attractive. I didn't think there was anything there. But what really attracted me after being a day there is the spirit of the confreres. And obviously that came from Father Abbot Parker and all the Hungarian fathers that came here that created that spirit, and then all the confreres that were there. And it was a very small community at the time, maybe about 25, 30. And there was something very, very special there. That night I said something to myself when I put my head on the bed that I never said to myself. And it kind of shocked me that I had even that thought. And it was, I can become a saint here. That's what I thought before I went to sleep. And then I thought to myself again, like, I don't understand why I'm saying this. I never think this way. But there was something very special about the place, the spirit of that place. And I think that spirit, it grew, obviously, with many converts coming. And that spirit is what actually, it was a strong spiritual movement that the Holy Spirit was moving in our community, that it grew very quickly. And then from there, we built something which was magnificent. That's equivalent to that spirit that had already been instilled and had grown with the Hungarians coming from their monastery that had been suppressed. So out of something that had been cut down, there was a shoot that grew.
Succisa virescit.
Succisa virescit, which was the Abbot's coat of arms.
Yes.
Abbot Parker's coat of arms, is that from what has been cut down, there was a reflowering.
Yes.
And this is exactly what happened. It's flowered beautifully now. From those 7 fathers, now we have over 100 confreres here and growing.
You know, it strikes me, Father Justin, that's a really beautiful kind of explanation of what the life of Canons Regular is, the canonical life, that we have this heritage that we strive to live and then pass on and carry on now, which is this 900-year-old tradition that comes from Premontre and St. Norbert, St. Augustine, of this monastic life inside the Abbey that then bears fruit in the apostolic ministry of priests outside of the walls of the Abbey. And that really, that's what happened. I mean, that's what you're describing there, right? That the fathers came from Hungary for all of the vicissitudes of history, and they started this canonical life.
St. Augustine in the Rule tells us something which is really very beautiful, but he's just repeating what our Lord himself said. You know, the summary of all the commandments are really 2, the golden precepts. You know, love God above all things, and then your neighbor as yourself. And so we, as canons, embrace that life by, how do we love God above all things? Well, it's in the solemn celebration of the sacred liturgy. The Mass, done beautifully, respectfully, reverentially, and then the divine office, which we do every day, 7 hours every day. So that's how we manifest our love for God. And then that flows into the life of the confreres, loving our neighbor as ourselves, and loving the community life, living the community life together, sharing common table, recreation, apostolic work, etc. And then from there even flows further out in the apostolic work that we do, whether it's in the schools, whether it's in the hospitals, the prisons, the parishes, wherever it may be. That life, that charity that flows from God, that comes to the community, flows then to all our apostolates. And I think that the fathers brought that with them, that spirit that, first and foremost, we have to pray together. And we have to pray to God to show our love for him. And then from there, God gives us the graces then that flow through that life of prayer to live the community life, and then by extension, the bigger community which we serve.
Yes. What do you think people are looking for? Now that we're here at the new Abbey, this place is just absolutely overwhelmed with people coming to seek the sacraments, to make a pilgrimage on the great feast days, or even just on any day, to come and pray with us, to see this beautiful place, to see the life of the confreres lived here. Why do you think, why is that this place now is exploding with this apostolic need and vigor right now?
Well, I think, and I've experienced this in the parishes where I've assisted, is that people are really hungry for what is transcendental, is what is beautiful, what is true, what is good. They're just hungry, and they're not finding it. They're not finding it in the world. They're not finding it in their Instagram page. They're not finding it. And what they're looking for is they're looking for something which God has infused into us. And that is, they're looking for him in many different ways. And I have seen so many young men and women, and I'm talking about college age and even younger, who really want to find something sacred, something that's beautiful, and they don't even in some churches, they don't find it because we have A-frame churches everywhere. And there's nothing wrong with that if you can't afford anything, but we built the church here so that it could reflect the importance, the depth of our faith, and how important our faith is. If something is important, then we're going to manifest it somehow. And in this edifice, we did the best we could to make it look like a church, a beautiful church that would help our souls rise to God. And when people come here, they see that, and they're edified. And I think that makes them find a home here. They're looking for beauty, they're looking for the truth, they're looking for goodness, and they're finding it where it is. And I think the Abbey has that. Plus we have the community life to support it with the sacraments. We have the tours that we give even just to explain the artwork in the church, because so many people don't know anything about it, but they're interested. And I think that they find it here, or they find at least the spark of something deeper that God is calling them to here.
Yeah, it's really miraculous what God has done in our midst with Father Abbot Eugene's leadership over the last 30 years. And you've really, from the beginning of your priesthood until now, kind of on this, at the close of his tenure as abbot, 30 years, and the dawn of a new abbatial tenure, whoever that is. We don't know who this new abbot will be yet. But you've watched this arc of you learning what it means to participate in the life of the community in such a way that you can help Father Abbot Eugene with that vision of a new property, a new monastery, a new abbey church, all of these things, and therefore the new fruitful apostolic life that comes from that, along with all the vocations. Thinking back to as you and I were collaborating some in the construction of the new abbey church and what that was going to look like, and just the really arduous project of raising the funds and inviting people who know and love us to help us with this unbelievable project of acquiring land, building a monastery, moving into it, building an abbey church. What is that going to look like? There were many, many obstacles along the way. And I remember thinking, we talked about this often in those more than 10 years of working for that, about how the suffering that goes along with these very great goods is the reason why God blesses it. There's suffering and sacrifice, and out of that suffering and sacrifice is born what's truly according to God's holy will. So what do you think now in this moment of our Abbey's history, what is God asking of us by way of sacrifice so that we can continue to be doing his will?
I would think that the sacrifice that God is calling us to do is, there's so many people in the world that are so broken that our apostolic work, particularly via the media, what you have been doing in the last year and a half, 2 years, has really brought a lot of people closer to the Abbey that are not even nearby. They're all over the world. And we see people that they'll send in comments about following certain programs, whether it's the Great Fast or in preparation for a great feast. We see that they are benefiting from our community life, from our life, our spiritual life here. And I think that the sacrifices that are unknown to most people, but that we all have to endure, and that we all have to grow into, I think all of the sacrifices, they're bearing fruit. One of the most important things that I noticed in this community is that it always prays. It's always praying. And we never suppress one of the hours of the office. We always do faithfully all the divine office. The confers make the efforts to be there. And that's what really keeps the community really faithful. I think that spirit there, it's sacrificial sometimes, because you have to break what you're doing, or you have to come back. And it seems like a small thing, but to make that sacrifice and leave whatever you're doing to come and pray at a certain hour when it seems like it's inconvenient is so important for a canon, because that's what we're committed to It's the love of God first. And if we invert that and we put, well, we have to think of our neighbor first before God, then we lose sight of that and we become social workers. And we don't want that. So I think the sacrifice is really to be faithful to our commitment, to our vow that we made to God and to community. And if we're very observant about that, I think that everything is going to flow and many people will benefit from all that sacrifice. I think that as we started embarking upon the idea of building a new abbey, I mean, we were making like $1 million a year and we're spending $1 million a year. And to build an abbey for $100 million, that had to be a miracle. And when I was tasked with that responsibility, I was thinking, how are we going to do this? But the one thing that I knew for certain is that if I'm being asked to do this by my abbot, I know somehow it's going to happen. And I don't know how. And a lot of people made sacrifices, people that helped us build this abbey. In other words, they didn't do it from their excess. They did it like the little widow that gave everything she had.
From her substance.
From her substance.
Not from her excess.
Yeah.
Yes.
Many people made that sacrifice. And I think that that's so pleasing to God. Because most people would think, oh, you probably have a lot of rich people from, you're from Orange County that are going to give you all kinds of money. The biggest gifts that we received were not from those people. They were from people that were very simple, and they didn't have lots of money, but they gave far beyond what anyone would have judged them. They didn't live in the right zip code. They didn't drive the right car. They weren't around the right people. Those are the people that actually helped build the Abbey. And that was a sacrifice I think they made, and I think it was because they saw the sacrifices that we made. And one gentleman told me once, he said, I asked him, why are you so generous in your giving? You give to a lot of different organizations. You've given us a lot of your own capital to build this Abbey. And I remember him telling me, he says, you gave your whole life. I'm just giving you something that I have, that I've been able to work with. But you gave your life. I didn't give my life. And I thought to myself, well, I did. I give my whole life to God. And that's what we do when we make our solemn professions. We're on the ground there to symbolize that we're giving everything to God. And that, I think, moves people to, they see the sacrifices we have to make, that they want to make those sacrifices as well.
Yes.
That's what built the Abbey.
It's good. It's also reciprocal, I think, that edification and that inspiration, because, those mornings where that 4:30 or 4:45 or 5 o'clock wake up time for us is difficult, or it's difficult to get to noon at 4:20 in the afternoon because it's the middle of something else that I'm doing. And you think, well, there are people who made those kind of sacrificially generous gifts of their substance so that I can live in this monastery. So I better get out of bed and get to the office. That sort of thing where exactly. I can remember their generosity, even if I'm the one who gave my life to the priesthood and to the religious life, but still, it's not like you are, well, maybe you are, but I'm certainly not always faithful to that gift of myself to God. I need to be inspired to be faithful again today. Yeah. And those people help us to do that. It really is a community of support, isn't it? Yes, it is. And you know what? The other thing about those sacrifices they made is that when I approached these people with a request for a gift to build the Abbey, it was never I never looked at them as like ATMs. I can go there and I can get so much money from them. Never. I incorporated the priesthood in my asking them for gifts. And what I mean by that is that I accompanied them in discerning how God wanted to use the resources that they had been blessed with, to do something magnanimous for God. And that's what really inspired a lot of people to give, because the approach was very different. It wasn't about, you're going to get your name on this plaque or you're going to do this. It's about what great things can you do for God? How can you be magnanimous with the blessings He's given you? And it was such a different approach for them. And some of them had been approached by different organizations, but this approach was very different. And I think it made them think
I can do something great for God. And in some cases, people that never thought they could give $1 million ended up doing $1 million or more because they wanted to do something great. And that's what really our faith is about. It's like, our faith is so great. Wouldn't we want to manifest the greatness of our faith by our actions, by what we give, what we build, what we leave as a legacy for other generations? These people were inspired by that. And that, I think that inspiration came from the sacrifices that we made here, and the life of community, and especially our divine worship. We were praying for this all the time. I remember we used to pray for it all the time, and it was a miracle. We call it the miracle of St. Michael. How could we have built a place that was over $100 million when we were basically making $1 million and breaking even if we were on a good year?
If we were lucky.
Yes,
if it was a good year.
If it was a good year. Exactly. So it was a total miracle. And the response of the people here was incredible. One priest who said to me at the beginning when we started this project, he said, I don't know if this is going to happen. So I don't know if people have the faith to make it happen. And I thought that was an interesting insight. And I went to him afterwards and I said, now, do you think people here have the faith? We built it. And I think he agreed. He said, yeah, I guess people do have lots of faith, and that's the reason why we built it, because they have a faith, and their faith inspired them to do something great for God.
And that bears so much fruit for the church. And the history of our pre-Monstratensian order, now more than 900 years, is where we see this collaboration between the laity and the religious, especially manifest in the construction of abbeys. So our order began with one monastery in the north of France, and then 2 generations later, Chorna is a granddaughter. You know, there's another monastery founded, Maniovarad, which founds another monastery, Chorna, which founds another monastery, St. Michael's Abbey. And all of that is with the collaboration of the lay faithful and this mutual support. What good things come through the history of the church is a question for you. What do you think that God affects historically, politically, culturally in the building of a new monastery?
Oh gosh, there's so much good that comes from there. If you think about that monastery in Chorna, I believe was founded by 2 counts. They were brothers, and they left, their
estate, their wealth
to them, and it was extensive. It was extensive because it was not just the building of the actual monastery, but it's actually its sustenance for generations to come, and it's still there to this day. So you think of the legacy that those 2 men left. That how many religious for how many centuries and continue to live there and continue to praise God and live the community life and assist the faithful there. The things that we do in this life, have echoes in eternity. And I think when you do something so great like that, you don't know how many people's lives you're changing, you're touching, you're bringing closer to God. So the building of this abbey, I think, in the same way, we don't have the nobility like they did in those days, where a few people possessed a lot of money, but we do have a lot of people now who do have resources, and they're able to use those resources for something greater than just themselves or aggrandize themselves. They can do it for the good of the church, which helps so many people. And I always tell people, I say, when you help the Abbey, you're really helping not just to construct a building here, but it's what happens in there. And that's the divine worship of God. The greatest thing that a man can do is worship God. And then from there, all the different apostolates that we have. If you think we have a place in Wilmington, we have a place in San Pedro, we have a place in Costa Mesa, all these different places where we minister to so many people. So the good that comes out of that, and the good of what you've done to help build this abbey, to help young men come here, to be formed, then to serve your community and abroad. It's incredible the amount of good that happens there, and how we can help be a leaven in society. How we can bring people who may not have the capacity of having a religious education or have instruction at a parochial school, now have that opportunity because we are there to assist them in that ministry. There's so many good things that come out of something which we might think is, oh, it's a small little drop in the bucket, but you don't know how it's going to affect so many people in the future and even now, and your own families. And if we want to keep our faith, or we want to keep our Catholic faith vibrant and alive, we need courageous people to do courageous things like that in order to continue the faith and to be here when Christ comes again.
You were ordained just shortly in the same month that Father Abbot Eugene was elected the second abbot of St. Michael's Abbey, and the entirety of your priesthood now has been during his abbatial tenure up until this year. Tell us about how his abbatial tenure has left a mark on our canonry.
Well, the most apparent mark that he's left is he's left this monastery, which it was totally his idea. It was totally the necessity that the Holy Spirit is moving us. That some confreres were thinking, no, we can just start small little communities here or there. But he was very visionary in the sense like, no, we have to build a proper monastery here in Orange County. We can't leave here. This is where we are rooted. And so it was totally under him, and he was very encouraging, even in very difficult times when we were struggling to get the funds to build the monastery. He was always very encouraging. He was always very supportive. He always had a very positive outlook about this is going to happen. God wills it. And even from people who were, I hate to use the word naysayers, they said, oh, you'll never get that built. He didn't let that faze him. He pressed on. And I feel very humbled because he entrusted me with, helping him raise the funds. And like I said, I didn't know what I was doing. But because he had given me that responsibility, I think that's why it flourished, because I was just open to what the Holy Spirit was telling me.
During the ups and downs of this effort to build a new monastery, but everything else in his abbatial tenure since I've been in the Abbey, which is now 25 years, he always has St. Joseph, his baptismal name is Joseph, and he always has St. Joseph as kind of the shepherd of his abbatial ministry and of this project. St. Michael, of course, is our great patron in the Abbey, but St. Joseph was kind of the particular, seems to me, looking from the outside, the particular saint and father and guide that Father Abbot Eugene has always turned to in guidance for his fatherhood as our Father Abbot. Would you agree?
Yes. As a matter of fact, the day we broke ground here was on St. Joseph's Day, March 19th, 2018. And it was, Father Abbot was convinced it was all St. Joseph, and he always mentions that. It wasn't us. Yes, obviously it's divine power here. It's God himself, but through the intercession of St. Joseph, and we started praying to him for his intercession for this project from the very beginning. We even wrote the prayer, and we said it, and we passed it out, and we said it at every meeting that we had. Right. So St. Joseph he is, of course, the provider and protector of the Holy Family, and he's also our protector and provider here. And it was very clear to me that statue that we had planted here, I think it was in 2006 when we were looking for this property here. We planted at the very end of the property.
He has a little shrine up there overlooking the whole property.
Exactly.
At the very top of the mountain,
yes.
Practically.
And it was 2006 when that happened, and we enshrined it there, and the place was not for sale at the time. But by 2012, when we finally got the property, we went back up there, and it was totally weathered, but St. Joseph was still there.
Yes.
And so it was clear that he was doing the negotiations for us to acquire this property, and it was a great success. So looking forward to this election as we approach it. It's very much like a conclave. It's a little conclave. So we go in there, and then we do the prayers that are required, and then after the prayers, we put our name, the name of a person that we want as as our next abbot, and it's a really momentous occasion because if you think about it, he is a father. You know, that's what abbot means father, and like the Pope, you know, it's Papa is the father. He is the father that's going to provide. It's the father that's going to protect for the next foreseeable future.
Let's do a little bit of speculating now. We don't know who the next abbot will be. That we'll decide that soon. You and I together, along with all of our confreres, we won't decide. Maybe we'll be instruments whereby God shows us whom he has chosen through our selection process. But then that man will govern our community as our father for a while, and there will be another one, and there will be another one. We could go down into the crypt and we can pray at the tombs of all of these abbots in succession if we live long enough. Where do you hope, or what do you hope the Abbey will look like 10 years from now, 50 years from now, 100 years from now?
10 years, I might probably be able to see what it looks like. I don't know about 50 or 100 years, but I was just thinking when you mentioned that, I was like, well, you know, I know there's like this idea of like going to the moon and starting to play the first abbey that's going to be in one of the planets outside of the Earth. That might be kind of interesting, but it's hard for me to speculate because God's ways are so much greater than our ways. You know, and as Isaiah says, he's like, as high as the heavens are above the earth, so are God's ways above our ways. His thoughts above our thoughts. So I'm sure he has something greater than we even plan or we even think. But it would be wonderful to see that the faith is not only taking root here, but it's spreading, and that's part of what we're doing here. An abbey is a home to, yes, all these religious that live here that consecrate themselves to, but for what? So they can bring that life of community, that life of worship of God to not only the local communities, but they start a new abbey. So whether they're in the moon or they're in Asia or
North Korea,
yes, wherever it may be, I think that God's ways are so much greater than ours that he has great plans for us. And it's just a matter of us being open to those inspirations that he gives us.
You've seen so much of that manifestation of God's goodness in your time at the Abbey that we can only hope for equal and more.
Yes. His father Abbot, Eugene says he walks around like late at night and he's pinching himself. Is this for real? You know, he entered a very humble place. He was living in a trailer. You know, the Abbot was living in a trailer, and now he's here. And what God has been able to accomplish through our community. And I can't emphasize enough through the support that we received to build this abbey. Because some of those people that have helped, some of them passed away, some are still living, most of them are still living. They made huge sacrifices and they really have the faith. They really believed in us. They believed in God, obviously, and in the church. But they believed in us and in our work, and they wanted us to continue and to multiply. So the future, I think it's going to be just a lot of white everywhere, bringing the light and the good news of our faith, you know, to places in the world that maybe we've never been in.
Praise God. Father Just, this has been a joy. Thank you. Thank you for your confraternity, and thank you for your inspiring example of priestly and canonical life. God bless you.
Thank you for having me, and all the best to you and all the great work that you do, and especially thank you to all the people that have been so helpful to us to get to where we're at.